Well, hello everyone and welcome to another episode here on the MIgardener channel. Today we're going to be talking about volunteer plants and why I love them. So first off, what is a volunteer plant? Now, a lot of you have probably heard the term volunteer plant or a volunteer pumpkin sprouted in my compost pile. Well, that essentially sums up what it is. It is a plant that you did not intend on sprouting, but it sprouted anyways because a seed was left behind. Sometimes it's from a bird that's flying overhead and does its business and it lands in some fertile soil and simply grows. Or oftentimes a fruit will fall off of your plants here and will then begin growing as the fruit rots and the seeds fall into the soil. Or oftentimes the plant goes to seed, like with my spinach here. And it can take 1 or 2 years for this to happen. Sometimes the seed will fall and it'll sprout in the springtime of next growing season. Or in the case of this spinach, I grew it in the springtime, went to seed and then dropped its seed, and now the seed is sprouted and there's a very lush mat of some spinach sprouts. And now why do I love that? I love volunteer plants because they are effortless. You have to apply no effort because they are simply growing on their own. You did not have to plant them there. They're simply just growing because that's the way nature had intended it. And I like that for multiple reasons. Number one, I don't have to worry about planting. Number two, yes, they might be crowded, but nature has a way of thinning that out. It knows naturally that when too many things sprout, that it's going to select the strongest plant to grow out of the other smaller ones. That's what happens in nature. And so you're going to have stronger plants. But another thing on the stronger plant idea is that the plant has already been growing in your climate. It adjusted to those minute changes in temperature. Maybe you got your seed from across the country and they have a much different climate than yours. Your plant's going to grow great, but not as great as one that's been grown for years in that climate for the same for that same growing conditions and the same soil types and water and temperature, humidity. All those things go into play when producing a very healthy plant. So your plant might seem healthy, but trust me, when it goes to seed, drops its seed, and grows again, you're going to notice a much more vigorous plant, a much healthier plant, and a lot of times I find that it produces more as well, just because of that very minute climatization. It just gets climatized to the growing conditions. It just knows that there is something different and it has to start adjusting to those differences, otherwise it's not going to survive. Now the next thing that I want to talk about with volunteer plants is that they make great gifts. Oftentimes I will have too many volunteer plants, like in the case of tomatoes. I got some tomatoes over here and they will drop their tomatoes sometimes if we're on vacation and one rots, or sometimes if one has a bad spot, I'll simply just throw it underneath the plant for the slugs and stuff to get to, and the seeds will drop out and sprout and they will simply grow. And actually I have a couple plants here and I got a couple plants over there, and so basically what happens is that you have a case of plants growing where you might not want them to grow, but they're growing anyways. So instead of killing them off, I'll dig them up, put them in a pot, and I'll give them to a friend or a neighbor. And it's just a great way to use those plants that are growing instead of just killing them off. And now you have a plant that you can give as a gift. And this is the volunteer spinach that we spoke about earlier. These were the spinach plants, obviously, that just fell over and died. And then you have coming up underneath here, baby spinach, more baby spinach right there, got a lot over there. And you just come through here and all over the place where these plants have dropped their seed, you have spinach, free plants that I obviously did not plant and will obviously grow for a nice fall harvest. Now the next form of volunteer plant is going to be your strawberries. And these are ones that will come from a mother plant and they will simply just begin rooting wherever they set on the ground. So for instance, this plant I was growing right in my walkway, and again, I can't have plants growing in my walkway, they're just going to get smushed. So I simply uprooted it, and it's got some beautiful roots here. This is a fully sustaining, self-sustaining plant. It's got roots, it's got a lot of green leaves to produce energy, and so I'm just going to bring it back here, plop it in my bed, and that's where it's going to grow. I got another one right here. And strawberries, for any of you that have grown them, know that they are extremely prolific and can actually begin getting a little bit invasive because they will simply put runners wherever they wish. Here's another one that's draping over the bed, and I like to just bring mine back, put them in the bed. But over time, I'm going to have too many, so I'm going to have to begin clipping them. So what I'll do is I'll simply let these plants do their thing. Here's one that is set down a plant, set down another plant, and then is actually setting down a third plant here. So this is how they grow. And what I will do is I will simply let it just grow there for a little bit to get some roots. I'll pull it up, or sometimes I'll take a little pot, like a little square pot, set them in that pot right in the walkway, let them root, and then I will just take my fingers here, snip that off, or I'll take scissors and snip that off, and you then have a plant that you can plant in a pot, give to a friend, family member, or even sell, and it is a free plant that you did not put there, but nature just works, and you can reap the rewards of it. And the very last one that I wanted to talk about was tubers. Now, when you plant tubers like potatoes, or in this case, Jerusalem artichokes, you have a case where sometimes you don't get all of the tubers up. And so what happens is that the tubers will then regrow the next year. And those tubers will produce all new plants that you might not have wanted to grow there that year, but you have them. So what I like to do is I like to just grow them, because then what happens is you have more of a harvest, and I don't know anybody that hates that. So what I will do is I will just let them grow. I will pick the tubers and I will have them. If I forget a few, oh well, they'll just grow next year. And it's one of those things that they won't travel because they're in the same spot that I planted them. But as long as I remember that, and I kind of mark that spot off and say, okay, I'll wait maybe a couple weeks to see if anything sprouts, then I'll plant something there. By waiting, I can see if something's going to sprout. So I'll simply just plant out the rest of the bed, have that spot kind of marked off where I had Jerusalem artichokes or potatoes. And if nothing begins to sprout within 3 or 4 weeks, I'll say, okay, I don't have any volunteer plants this year. Oh well, I have some down in the basement that I'll plant. But if I have these, I'm going to grow them because they're going to be better, more hardy, and they're going to be ready to grow for you as soon as the spring warms up and says, hey, let's get growing. And so in short, anything can be a volunteer plant if you let it go to seed and it has the right climate to regrow. And hopefully you all will let them grow, because I know a lot of people that treat them as weeds, and that's just kind of sad, because they're taking the time to grow for you, and they're something that you liked to grow last year, and they're delicious. So let them go to seed, let them grow, and it's a great way to ensure that you're going to have nice, robust vegetables the next year or later on in the season. And if you don't want them, hey, give them to your friends and family. I don't know anybody that turns down a vegetable seedling, because everybody knows how great homegrown vegetables are. So if you can't find a place for them, just give them away. And until next episode, this is Luke from MIgardener, reminding you to grow big or go home. I'll talk to you all later. See ya. Bye.